Hey, it's Susan Palmer of Leadcat Press. Welcome to my studio update. Sorry I haven't seen you in a few weeks. I got that virus that no one really talks about anymore. It's still kind of a big deal. Anyways, I had to cancel my April guitar classes and a lot of my lessons this past month, and I just wasn't able to do the studio update, so I'm very happy to be back with you all. This is just a reminder that I do hope to run my May guitar classes, so sign up in the link below for my newsletter so you can get all that information when that comes out. That includes the free class that I offer each month. For this week's studio update, you can always hop on down to the description box there to get to the section that most interests you. In the technique, we'll be covering enclosures. I'm running a C major scale in all 5 positions up the neck, ascending and descending with this common enclosure pattern. For the reading, I'm helping students learn how to get more out of their reading exercises so that they're not memorizing their exercises, but really learning the skills that allow them to play every music that they come across. For the chords and grooves, I apply the cage system chords to another system for learning how to play melodies along with those chords. So a cage system and a melodic system, they meet. For the soloing section, I drop some chord punches into the song How High the Moon. So again, we're soloing and playing some chords, and I demonstrate how to do that for any tune, so you can get started on that right away. For the theory, I go over a Charlie Parker lick, and I just kind of talk about how to learn licks a little bit easier for guitar players and why that's important. And for the tune, I go over Here's That Rainy Day. I share my chord voicings that I use for that tune when I play that oftentimes, at least a good place to start from. For the pro tip, my advice is to play like a professional. So I hope you enjoy this week's session, and thanks for tuning in, subscribing to my channel, newsletter, and again, I do offer private lessons, so you're welcome to reach out anytime. I'm going to demo this enclosure study in the key of C in all 5 positions, and just to review, I'm starting, if my first note that I want to hit is C, the root note, I'm going to start on the note D, and then play the note B, and then C. So I'm starting up a diatonic, down a half step, and then finding that note. For the note D, which is my next target note, I'm starting with E, which is a diatonic up from D, C sharp, and then D. And when I'm descending, I'm going to do something a little bit different. If the note I'm going to go for is G, when I'm descending, I'm first going to play F sharp, so a note below, diatonic up, which is A, and then G. So here's the A string root or 5th string root pattern. And then descending. And I switched back to that original pattern once I hit the lowest note and then came back up. I think on the guitar, it's especially important to figure out how you're going to bookend each one of these exercises, not just with this this enclosure exercise, but any exercise that you do, make sure you tie up those loose ends because we've got them on the guitar. And I always start and stop on the root note of each scale just so that that is really what is ringing through the whole time. The next positions sound and look like this. I have a little suggestion for those of you who are learning how to read music, especially if you're using the Guitar Lesson Companion. And it has to do with students who are accidentally memorizing the piece as they are working through the exercise. And there's a few things that you can do to prevent that. And I think the most obvious is to not start on line 1 each time you sit down to practice. So maybe sometimes you're starting at the end of the piece. You start on line 8, then play line 7, then line 6. I know this stuff seems obvious, but sometimes we just need a little reminder of that. Another thing that you can try is to read the first measure of each line. And then maybe once you reach the bottom of the page, so at line 8, then play measure 2 going up, and then measure 3 going down, measure 4 going up. I've demonstrated in the past on these little weekly updates how you could also play a whole piece in reverse, and that's obviously another option. A lot of times people struggle when they're changing from one line to the next. So what I'll do in lessons oftentimes is have students play measure 4 of each line and then play the first measure of the next line. So that just helps you work out your transitions there. And then when you play it again with the audio track, you've got it. A big question that a lot of guitar teachers get is, how do I play chords and single notes at the same time? And I'm going to show you something utilizing all of the information that you have studied and learned from page 146 of the Guitar Lesson Companion Volume 1. And this is assuming you've done all of those exercises and your teacher has quizzed you on those and you are good to go. And you're probably already playing some chord melodies and working on some stuff on your own. So the idea is that I'm going to use G7 here, and I'm playing, all of these voicings that we've learned for that G7 chord, and I'm going to try attaching some melody notes to that. So the first one is going to be the weirdest one. We're going to change our fingering a little bit, but you'll know why very shortly. So here's my E string root G7 chord. And I want you to notice that we have a G on our low string, which means that we have a G up here as well in our high E string. So instead of playing this, which I'm using all my fingers, and this is a great chord to play in many, many situations. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my fingering so that instead of this G, I can play this G. And to do that, I'm going to bar with my first finger across the 3rd fret, putting my second finger down where that note was being played before by my pinky, the note B there on the G string. And then I've got, the other 2 notes are under my first finger there, the D and the G. Now when I do this, that means that while that chord is ringing out, I've got access to all these other notes. So those are nice melody notes that I can kind of throw in there along with that chord. Here's the next position. This is our D string root. So here you can see I'm barely moving really. I'm grabbing the C with my pinky on the high E string. I have a B here also on the high E string. I'm reaching up on the B string to get this G. Then I have an F and a D that's already being played and another G. Now obviously these are all chord tones, so those are going to sound really awesome, right? So those are all great notes to play. The next shape we have a C shape right here. And, I can kind of bend around with that a little bit, but ideally what I like to do is turn that dominant 7 chord into a dominant 9 chord. And what that means is I'm going to lose this extra root. I already have a G down here. I don't need that one. So I'm going to turn that G into an A, change my fingering a little bit, and that allows me access to this note E. So I have some other notes there that I can play. My next shape is the A shape. And from there, I can use my pinky to get all kinds of things. Play a bunch of notes up there. It's pretty self-explanatory if you know the notes and you know the shape. And then the last one is this G7 and a G string root. And remember that the parent chord on that, it's really hard to play on this, but it's up here, kind of a G7 that you know down here. You're playing it up here. And obviously, this is great because I've got my first finger just playing all of those notes. So I got all these other fingers to play all these other notes. So I want you to throw on a G bass drone track, and I'll drop the link below and see if I can link to it here in the video itself. And I want you to practice your G7s with throwing some of those melodies on top. And right now your job is just to experiment around, play those chords, play some single notes. We're keeping it simple. Later on you can change chords, but just use these basic grips here to kind of get a feel for the sounds and the melodies that you can create. This is another example using the cage chords and also I think some drop two voicings as well that will allow you to play a tune and make it sound like you're playing the chords and a solo at the same time. In this example, I'm using How High the Moon, and I'm just dropping a chord wherever a chord symbol occurs in the chart. So you can give that a try very slowly, and just you're starting by playing a chord. The highest note I'm playing in that is D. And then the next chord is G minor. So there I'm just noodling around. So I just played G and then G minor, and I obviously changed my scale around as the chords change. So you're going to want to know a little bit of how to do that first. But at any rate, try that, and here's the example. This is something I suggest for all of my guitar students. When you're listening to music and you find something that you like, learn it. This is especially true for jazz musicians. The other day, I was listening to Charlie Parker and this lick popped out. So I used the Audio Stretch app. You can loop it, and you can also slow things down if you need to. The notes in that are A, D, E, F. And after you learn that, you're going to want to play that in as many different places as you can on the guitar. And this goes over a G7 chord. My pro tip for you this week has to do with practicing and performing. And I really want you to act like you are the practicer or the performer that you want to be. And what I mean by that is, if I'm practicing and I notice that I'm getting really bad tone, I'm really snapping my strings a lot, and I don't like that tone, I'll kind of ask myself, is this how expert Susan Palmer is going to be playing guitar when she's practicing or when she's warming up? No. I strive to be the kind of person who always plays with good tone. And so just that little thing, gives me a little more, it's not just confidence, but it's like the permission to play better, because that's who I am ultimately, right? And that's who you are. And when it comes to performing, I might imagine getting, right now I don't have a gig lined up. So I'm, imagining that I might be nervous before that first gig of the summer. And I'm hoping to be able to tell myself, pretend or, act like you've been doing this all year. It hasn't been since last summer that you played a live solo jazz gig. So and that I think is going to make me feel like I own the gig, you know, like I'm there, I'm doing my thing, and I'm a professional. So I just want you to try that on and see how that feels.